everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I get the pleasure today of doing another one of the Potomac Bead Company 2016 Challenge winners. And this necklace here is Flowers and Pebbles, and it is featuring our disc duo in the middle with some round duo on the outside, and then also some super duos as well. This design was done by Johanna Lilja, and she created this design for the challenge and really featured the Potomac Bead Company products in it, so that's fun because I get to use it. In Johanna's, you're going to use 7 components, and it is component based. If you happen to need any of these materials to make this design, on the left-hand side here, we'll do a little drop down, so that way you can gather the materials for the flowers and the flower and pebbles, that has a different little link here to the different products that you need. You can also take that list, write it down, go to your local Potomac Bead Company stores, or shop with me online there. If you do also want to get a more detailed list for the colors and everything, you can go down below the video here in the details, and we'll add that in for you as well. For the piece itself, we are using the disc duo beads in the middle, and I'm using the opaque sunflower yellow, and that's a nice kind of bright yellow, and that has the Picasso finish on it for the disc duos. For the disc duos, you are going to use 7 of the disc duos in the middle of the project. The next, working from the inside out, is we're going to be using some 11 OC beads. The 11 OC beads that I've chosen to use are the Duracoat galvanized gold color. So it's that nice kind of gold shine, and they are 11 OC beads. As we work our way out further, I get to my super duos. The Smoky Topaz Super Duo is a nice kind of opaque or a translucent brown that works nicely to kind of play on those colors. For the actual super duos, you are going to need about 56 for your components plus 8 to go in between. So you're looking right about 62. One tube will do it for you if you do need to get the super duos and you want to grab them from us. To highlight that super duo color at the very end, I'm using the light Colorado cut button, and you just need one of those for the very end of the product or project. And then continuing to work our way out, we have some 15s. These are the Duracoat 15s as well, and even though they look a little bit more orangish, the color that they are is the pink blush. So that really pops out and kind of makes that flower and the pebbles on the side really pop out in the middle. One tube again will do this for you if you are looking to do the 15s. You'll have plenty left. Whenever you get 15Os, a little suggestion is to get colors that you really like and that you'll really use. We even sell kits of the Duracoat that you can buy them all at once, because a tube will last you a really, really long time because there's a ton in here since they're very small. Working our way out further on our components, we have the opaque sunflower yellow round duos. Each component for that is going to use 8 of the round duos. You could do alternating colors, different flower colors as you're doing it. I'm sticking to one color like Johanna did on her piece. And that one color again is that opaque yellow sunflower. Because you are using 8 per piece and we're going to do about 7 components, you're going to need about 56 of your round duos. If you do have a little bit bigger of a wrist, you may want to add 8 more to your round duo count and 9 more to your super duo count, so that way you can make your bracelet a little bit longer. In addition to the beads, we're holding it all together with our wildfire beading thread, and this is the gray color to blend in nicely with those smoky topaz colors. I am going to be using about 8 feet of the thread when you're using it. I'm putting on the needle, or the thread onto a size 10 needle rather. If you want to have a 12, a 10, you can do that. I like the 10, and I usually use the Pony brand needle. I like the kind of stiffness of it. It straightens out, it bends back, but the needles are all up to you. I have also handy some super new glue. Because it is component based, we're going to be tying knots off at the back of each component, and you can do a little glue there if you like. Also, if you would rather, I use my thread burner and I burn down a lot of the thread edges. Whether or not you use the Wildfire Cord Cutter, the Threads Up Ultra, Threads Up 2, they're all kind of going to do the same thing. I just have the Threads Up 2 here handy. I am working on a bead on it board here. This is one of the newer ones. It's the Poppy board, and it is a nice bright surface to work on, and the beads kind of stick up with the holes facing up there. So if you do need a workable surface, work either on a bead mat or a bead on it board will give you a nice workable kind of, you can see I can pick up my bead on it board and move it around. So I like that when I'm doing the videos and working on it because I can move it to different locations. Again, if you need any of these materials, the little drop down on the left or right underneath the video in the description of the video, the details there, you can do a little show more and click on that link. Also, if you do purchase the disc duos or the round duo beads or even a 5-pack of cut buttons, just keep in mind you can always search when you're on one of our videos. You can search within our page on the little magnifying glass for any of those component beads, and that'll give you other videos that also use those beads as well. So if you're creating a shopping list and you know you're going to have extra disc duos after the project, you can think about what other projects you may want to use for those too. So it's just a little helpful hint and suggestion. As you can see, I've already done 2 of the components here. To do the components, we are going to be doing them one at a time and then linking them together as we go. I did 2 here just to get my count correct and make sure that the coloring was nice for you guys. But I'm going to teach you how to make your first initial component, and then I'll show you how to build onto that component as well as add others. To get started, I have my thread here, and again I usually work with about 5 feet at once. I've already done 2 components and I'm still on that same piece of thread. I'll be able to get one more component out of it and then I'll need to cut a new thread. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's going to use about 6 feet, approximately 6 to 8 feet of your beading thread. It uses a fair amount without you even realizing it because you're stitching back through the actual beads. To start the project, I am starting the middle with my super duos. If you want to, you can start the count by laying out your beads ahead of time in groups of 8. So that way you would know you need your 8 round duos, your 8 super duos, and your 1 disc duo bead. If you want to, you can just pick them up as you're working with them as well. Between the super duos, I am going to be putting that Duracoat Galvanized Gold 11-0. To start, I have my thread, and I'm going to put a bead onto my thread to work as a stop bead. This bead is eventually going to come off the project, and I'm just leaving myself about 2 inches right at the end of the thread, just something that I can tie a knot onto, and I am going through that bead 2 times. I know that that bead will come off the project again. If you want to, I generally will use a bead that's not part of my project. I actually have a really clean bead mat right now, so or a bead board right now, so I don't have one of those on the bead boards. I've just been using one of those pink blush 15-0s. So I have that on my bead board here, and I'm getting ready to add my super duos. The super duos, we're going to be building the components from the center out. So I'm going to be building from the center out and adding the disc duo at the very end. It's going to start with a chain of super duos, a super duo, then an 11-0, super duo, 11, and so on until we get 8 super duos that are separated by 11-0s onto our little needle and thread here. One thing when you're working with multi-hole beads, because the manufacturing process is done the way that it is, you just want to make sure that before you get started that all of your multi-hole beads have 2 holes. It's incredible to think how the machinery and everything is able to manufacture these little tiny beads, putting multiple holes into them, and sometimes you do have one that might have a little block on it, so you can check that ahead of time. After my last and an 8th and final super duo here, I want to make sure that I have an 11-0 seed bead. I'm actually going to take that off there because I got an extra one on here. And once I have my super duos on, I want to make sure again that I'm ending in an 11-0 because I didn't start with an 11-0. To bring this into a round circle, we are going to simply be adding on our thread here that we have. We're going back to the starting side with that stop bead, and I'm going to sew back through 4 of the super duos as well as the 11-0s after. I'm going to exit the 4th super duo bead and pull that thread into a tight circle. So you can see that creates your first little loop. Once you have that loop made, we're actually going to step up to the second hole of the super duo. To do so, I have this nice green thread that's kind of blending into the design. I'm going to go from the bottom hole of that super duo to the top hole of the same super duo, which is going to reverse my thread along the project. You will see a tiny bit of thread, but because it's that gray on that light brown, you're really not going to see much of it at all. Next, what we'll do is we're going to add 3 of our 15-0 seed beads in between each of the super duos right here. So I'm going to go around in the circle, adding 3 15s and sewing through the second hole of the next super duo. This is going to line the whole outer edge here with those 15-0s. You can see that it goes here then right around. And when you look at the project with those, you can see that they kind of get popped up to the front a little bit, and then the round duos are going to get pushed to the back. I'm going to continue adding these 3 15-0s, and then we'll come back and we'll add in our round duo beads. Adding in the 3 final beads here, I'm going to sew through that first super duo that the thread was coming out of, and that's going to finish out the loop. So I have those 3 15-0s in between each of those super duos, and what I'm going to do now is, coming out of each super duo, I'm also going to add one of my round duos. The round duos have 2 holes, one to the top and one to the bottom, and you're going to go ahead and add those in just through one of the holes, doesn't matter which one, sewing from the outer edge there of one of the super duos to the next super duo. So I'm completely ignoring the 15-0s that I just put on. Making sure my thread doesn't get tangled there, I'll add my next round duo, skip those 3 15s, make sure that thread's not twisted, and kind of tuck them to the bottom a little bit. Continuing on, add another, and so on. That's going to continue until we have 8 of those round duo beads onto the project. As I add in the last round duo, I wanted to show you that you do want all the round duos to sit to one side. So if you need to, as you're working, you kind of tuck back those round duos so they're below the 15-0s. As I go in and add the last round duo, go through the last super duo, as well as that first round duo that you put on through the first hole. Just like we stepped up from the super duo, from the inner hole to the outer hole, we're also going to do that with the round duo. We're stepping up from the bottom hole of one round duo to the top hole of the round duo, which is going to expose a little bit of thread there on the outside. For the actual link here, generally speaking, I'll start at one end and kind of continue on. Because of the nature of learning the project and how it works, we're actually going to be starting on the middle and then building our way out to the edges, and we'll be putting the clasp on as we get to the outer edge. If you want to, you could put the clasp on now, but I find it easiest to kind of work for the middle, because that way you'll have some extra thread to do each end. Also, you learn the pattern and it doesn't confuse you because you're adding the clasp right away. So doing the component, we're going to basically be making our middle component. Coming out of one of the round duos, add an 11-0, another super duo, and an 11-0. Just like we did with the super duos, we're going to do the round duos. Sewing through the second hole here, we're adding 3 11s. So when we went through the super duos, we added 3 15s between each of the super duos. Now we're adding 3 11s between each of the round duos on the outer hole. I'm going to add on those 3 11s, and then in between each of the sections, we're going to go ahead and right in the middle of those sections, I'm going to be adding a super duo. So you can see right here I have those 3 sections of my seed beads, and I have a super duo right on the side. Adding another super duo to the opposite side, That's going to get me my first middle link. You can see then in the project pieces that I already have completed, when you add then the next one, instead of adding a super duo on the first side, you're going to link in basically to the previous one that you created. In between these round duos, add 3 more of the 11s. And then we'll decorate the edge with our 15s. As you come back around, you have the 3 11s on. Go ahead and go through the first 11, the super duo that you added, and the 11 right after. If you wanted to, you could stick with a gold 11-Os and continue adding 3 11-Os, or you can switch to your pink blush color and add 4 15-Os. So I'm adding 4 15-Os onto my needle, and I'm going to skip over the round duo to this section of seed beads and sew through those 3 11-Os that we just put on. Give a nice tight pull, add 4 more 15s, sew through the next grouping of 3 seed beads. So we're decorating the edge here with those 15s. And as we get to the section with the super duo, you're just going to treat that just like another grouping of 3. So I have on my 4 seed beads here. So right through the seed bead, the super duo, and the seed bead. Right along the edge then, adding in the rest of the 15s. It will sit a little bit puckered and a little bit kind of puffed up on the edge. We want that effect of almost that 3D flowering look. As I add in the final 4 beads, I'm going back through that super duo with the seed beads on the side from the original start side, go through the 11, then also sew through the top hole of the closest round duo. Working our way back to the middle to drop in our disc duo, step down on the round duo, going from the outer hole to the inner hole of the same bead. Again, a little bit of thread is going to be exposed there on the side. Go through the next super duo, coming out through just the super duo. And basically I'm working my thread back, so I go back to the inner area here, just working and stepping down along the beads. I'm also then going to step down on that super duo there from the outer hole to the inner hole. And once I'm coming out that last super duo bead there towards the middle, I'm going to grab one of my disc duos, put on the disc duo through one of the holes. That's going to drop right down in the middle. I'm going to count over here to the 4th bead in line. So I'm coming out this disc duo here. That's my 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. You can also just pull your thread right along the side and you'll be able to see where you're going into. I'm going to go into that super duo on the opposite side, and that's going to pull that disc duo right in the middle there. On that opposite side, also sew through the next 11 and the next super duo with the thread and needle exiting that super duo, then sew through the other hole of the disc duo. When you're coming out the opposite side, count again over your 4 beads, the one you're coming out of, 2, 3, 4, right here along the edge, and go through that bead as well. As I go through that bead, I'm also going through one of the 11-Os. So you can see you're just kind of trapping it in the middle there. There you have it. And then what I'm going to do is, flipping the project over, I can see where my thread needs to get back to kind of that starter bead. I'm going to take my thread and needle from the top of the project, not sewing through anywhere, just kind of pulling the thread to the back. And I can see where the thread is coming out of, and then also where that beginning stop bead is. I'm going to know then where I have to get my thread and needle to in order to tie the knots off. So I'm just going to sew right along those super duos and those 11 O's till I make sure that my thread and needle are exiting right where the starter bead is. And if you need to, you can go through one at a time, poke towards the opposite end, and then again bring it from the back or the front to the back, go through the next super duo, and when I exit there, I'm going to take off the stop bead. Sometimes you can do that just by pulling the thread. Other times you'll need to go in and actually put a needle on the end. I'm usually pretty good that I can just pull it right off the end there. Take that thread end then and the thread that you've just used and tie those ends off. That's going to be your first component. It also looks really great as an earring that if you would want to, don't put in that extra super duo there, just do the one at the top and you can use that then to hook in your earring loop. I'm going to go ahead and tie that off a couple times. And then I'm not going to use my super new glue, but I will go in with my thread burner and just, burn down the ends of the thread just a little bit. That has the first component then already started here. And what I'm going to do is create a second component and add that second component in. The second component, when I add in, I will also show you when I get to the point of adding the super duo and that outer edge, how to connect if you want to, if you already had some other pieces made, how to connect basically just skipping adding the super duo bead, but instead adding the 11O, sewing into the super duo that's already there, and the 11O and continuing with your project. So go ahead and get ready making this center portion, adding your round duos, and then as we get to the outer edge, we'll go ahead and connect those into my first component piece as well as the other two sitting there. So building another component as I'm getting ready to add on to the first, I'm at the outer loop here where I have my round duos on and I'm getting ready to add my three 11 O's between each of the second hole of the round duo. On opposite ends, remember you also add your super duos. However, if you're already attaching to the one that you previously made, you're going to add one 11, go into the super duo that's already there from the previous one, making sure that you're going into the super duo so that way your loop section here is facing upward, facing the same direction. Add another 11, and sew through the second hole of the next round duo. Pull that nice and tight, and that'll just lay right in there on the connection point. Continuing on then, add your three 11s, sew through the next round duo, and when you get to the opposite end, if you're building on from one side to the other, you either link on to your next piece here, or you would add the 11, the super duo, and the 11 and sew through. So that's going to link to get you another section. Continuing on then, you'll continue adding your 11s in place. Go back then and add your 15s right along the outer edge and sew in your round or your disc duo bead there right in the middle. You're going to continue this process until you have 5 components, and then the last 2 components, component 6 and 7, which will be on the very, very end, so you want to have 5 linked together, and then the very end pieces, we're going to go ahead and add our clasp to the ends. So I'm making my components here, and I have the 5th component made and attached. I'm on the outer loop adding in my 15 OC beads, and this actually is going to fit me well with just 6 components rather than the 7th component added in. So now that I'm on the 5th one here, I'm going to get ready to add my cup button. Doing so, I have my middle still open and I've gone around the edge here, adding in the 15-0s. I have one more set of 15-0s to add, but what I'm doing is coming out of my super duo there right at the end, stepping up from the super duo, going through the second hole and exposing some thread on the outside. And when I'm coming out that super duo bead, I'm going to add in a couple of my 11-0s here. I'll add in 3 11-0s, go up through the back of the button. When I'm out the top, I want to bring some of the color into it, so I'm going to add that orange 15-0s, and we'll add 3 of them and come back down the other side of the button. Coming out the back end of the button here, add 3 more 11s. Go through that same super duo, through the same hole on that outer edge, and that's going to make my loop there. You can see as I pull it, connecting my button to the end. Reinforce that button by going back up through the entire edge of the project here, coming out the cut button. Go down through the cut button then, through the seed beads on the other side here. Give a nice tight pull to make sure that those 2 threads don't have any exposure. I'm going to go back through that same super duo. And when I'm coming out the super duo, I'm going to go from the outer hole closest to the cut button down to the base hole, going through the bottom hole of the super duo and the 15-0. As I do that and I'm coming out there, I'm going to add in the last 4 of my 15s. Go through the 11-0s to complete the outer edge there of the base. And here's where I'm going to go back in then and go through the second hole of the round duo that's closest. Going then from the outer hole and stepping down through the bottom hole. Go through the super duo that's right next to it. And I'm going to get back to the middle in order to add my disc duo in by stepping down from the super duo as well. Once I have the disc duo in place, all I'm going to do is tie off the thread ends and complete that component. That'll then have 5 of the components finished. And I'll go in and add the 6th component. Just like I added the cut button on the end, I'll add my loop on the end for the button to go through. So coming out here, I'll just add in that last little section here to add the disc duo. Again, adding the disc duo, making sure it's laying flat. When you do add the disc duo, once I know, see that stop bead is kind of up towards the top, push that down towards the bottom, so that way that stop bead is at the bottom and coming out the bottom before you get in that disc duo. That way when you do tie off the end and tie off the knot, the stop bead that you're going to pull off the thread is there to the back. Going through that super duo then. Going to add in here that second hole of the disc duo. And then simply take my needle and thread back so that way I can get back towards that stop bead. Going through the disc duo and the 11s all the way back till I have that thread to tie off. Once I tie off that thread, I have 5 of the components done, and I'm going to move on to the 6th component. I'm at the end of my 6 components here, and again, somewhere between 7 or the example that Johanna had done was 7 components. I ended up doing 6. I really like the color and the way that it is here on the wrist has a nice kind of summer vibe to it. So I down mine to 6 because I have a rather small wrist. The other thing that you could do is actually make it a necklace component. Because of the way that it is joined, it'll sit really nicely on the neck as a collar. You could use chain in the back, or you could do the whole thing as an actual collar necklace, which I would love to see. So if some of you guys do it, that's a little challenge for you. As I'm coming out the end here, I'm going to make my loop for my button to sit in. The loop I'm going to do with a 15-0s, but I'm going to start off first adding an 11-0 so it sits and mirrors the end and the middle of my components here where they link. Having an 11 on first with that gold color, and then adding a bunch of my 15-0s onto the project. If you are adding a regular clasp, a lobster, a toggle, something like that, you do want to keep in mind it's a good idea to use some wire guardians or wire protectors, and that's going to keep the thread from rubbing on the actual metal pieces themselves. When you make your loop, you want to make the loop, if you are using a button style clasp or something that you're making the loops for, you want to make them big enough that it fits around the button, but not too big that it's going to slide off. Especially if the bracelet is on the big side, that's how a lot of the buttons relax and go looser, that it could fall off. Same thing with toggles. If the bracelet's a little bit on the large side, that's a lot of times where the issue comes in with people losing their bracelets. At the end of my 15-0s, I'm adding an 11, sewing back through that end there, making sure that my button fits inside nicely. And then just like we did with the button, we're going to reinforce the loop here. Going back through all of those seed beads, and then bringing it out towards the end. Once I bring this all out towards the end, I'm just going to sew back through my project a little bit, tying off the thread along the back. You can see for this one here, I actually put in the disc duo first, and then I'm adding the loop after. So it doesn't really matter which version you do when you're adding the end pieces. But I do like starting with the middle and working the way out, so that way you really do get a good length measurement. If you would need to just sew a couple extra beads rather than do a whole component, that's a good idea too when you are working with more component pieces. So go ahead and reinforce the loop and then just sew it back down. You can tie off then right to the thread end behind that last component if you'd like. Just to show the end here, I'm showing you how to burn off the thread ends. With the thread ends, I generally will kind of pick them up a little bit, take my thread burner here, press on the side button, and burn down the thread ends. That makes actually a little balled up knot, which is gonna keep the pre-existing knot that you did from coming apart. If you want to, you can do a little bit of the super glue as well. I'm just going to burn down these edges, especially because it's a component piece and the edges aren't really going to be getting a lot of the tension. So go ahead and burn down your little edges here. And once you have all the pieces burned down, you can, if you want to do some gluing, you can also do that before burning. Generally when I do the super glue, I do the super glue first and then I burn down the edges. Once you have all the thread done here, your bracelet is finished. So the fun pebbles or flowers and pebbles bracelet here. I'll show you the look of it here on the wrist. Again, I have a small wrist. I did the 6 components and it fits perfectly. If you do not want to do a full 7 components, or you need 7.5, that's why we started from the beginning or from the middle and worked our way out. You can always just add an extra couple seed bead loops or add in an extra round duo at the end as well if you need it for fit purposes. If you do need any of the materials to make Johanna's bracelet here, or if you want to again make it into the necklace, you can go back to the beginning of the video where we have the little drop down menu so you can purchase from me online, or you can go to your local Potomac Bead Company store, shop there as well. Again, if you need the list, you can also go below the video here to the little description. There's a drop down there, you can click on that and get links to purchase there as well. As always, if you like the video and you aren't subscribed, feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You get regular updates, different designs, things that are coming up, and new ideas as well. So stay tuned for all of that. You can always also join us on our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group that is for beading and jewelry making. There you can interact with us, see different designs like Johanna's here, answer some questions, give opinions, and interact with other people making all different styles of jewelry. It's a really great way, to connect with some of those people. As always, have fun if you're creating and making this wonderful design. Again, a little challenge if you want to, throw in a necklace design there in the back. You can make a whole set with earrings, change up the colors, and have fun working on this flower and pebbles bracelet. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and stay tuned for more fun and enjoy making your design.